Today we're talking about light bulbs, and like an aha moment you might expect from Thomas Edison or Lewis Latimer, this idea came to me when I was watching season 6, episode 19 of Gilmore Girls. And I went, oh my god, what happened to this show? No, it's not because there's a whole plot line around Lorelai being an annoying texter. It's because I noticed how the show stopped being cozy. And it had nothing to do with the plot line or the script or the impending departure of Amy Sherman Palladino, and it had everything to do with light. There is a very wise Redditor who posted their theory 7 years ago. The show's lighting changed when the director of photography, Michael A. Price, left the show midway through season 5. And this Redditor made 2 full albums of proof. The before and the after show why I normally want to stop watching once Zach and Lane start dating, and not just because Zach and Lane started dating. Before, after. Before, after. Quickly you're noticing how much brighter the show became, and not like a bright sunny day, but instead like a Ford F-450 is rushing directly at them. The shadows are gone, the dark corners. Now all the areas with curves and clutter that made the show look so realistic became flat. Sure, I can show you images that will make you gasp, like season 4 versus season 7 of Luke's Diner. I know. But I want to focus on the kitchen as an example, because it'll transition well into my future topic. You can quickly see that the lighting changed drastically. In the earlier screenshot, the door to Rory's room is emanating with its own light, and now everything seems to be equally lit. All the clutter that used to fade into the shadows is now all very there, and it makes the place look messy and crowded. The background is just as bright everywhere, so the picture looks flat and a bit gray. And so do the people. And instead of the really warm tones of the lights themselves feel very bright, white, and cool. Now there are obviously lighting techniques that I wouldn't understand because I don't film things for a living. Well, I kind of do, but I do it terribly. But in this case, I doubt it's the style of light bulb that changed in season 5 of Gilmore Girls. It really comes down to someone was really good at their job, and then they left. But the style of lighting that replaces it in those final seasons also matches what was happening to lighting in housing for a completely different reason. So the theme song is proven right yet again. Where you LED, I will follow. I'm about to show you pictures of my former residence, and I'll be showing you the heart of the home. So please don't break my heart by being too mean in the comments. In my old apartment, I lived with 3, occasionally 4 other people, and we all shared a kitchen. This apartment had been in this friend group for over a decade, so it was a cozy mishmash of things that people had left behind. I always liked it, and although it was hard for multiple people to cook in, I felt it was warm and welcoming. Was it perfect? No. But it was a cute space that I cooked in for 4 years. But then tragedy befell this cozy kitchen. The overhead light stopped working. I texted the landlord, and next thing we knew, there was a brand new LED fixture, and the kitchen suddenly looked like this. To an untrained eye, you might think nothing had changed, but the energy was off. Suddenly the yellow walls didn't look warm anymore. They looked like my skin in February. And the linoleum tile, which I never really noticed, was now reflecting back at me with every piece of dirt and scratch it had ever encountered. And the cabinets that used to look kind of golden looked like my skin in March. And all the little kitchen mitts and cookbooks and clutter didn't look so cute anymore. And this communal kitchen that I thought was workable and nice for years suddenly felt like it was under an interrogation lamp. At the time, I couldn't put my finger on what happened. It just felt like poof, one day I wanted to paint the kitchen and take off all the miscellaneous clutter. So I did. I got a basic glossy white paint at the hardware store. My dad helped me make this semi-industrial second countertop, and I added a light that wasn't the overhead, so you didn't feel like you were being abducted by aliens while making goopy carbonara. Speaking of light, the sun's really coming in. I honestly like the changes, since it made it easier for multiple people to cook. I also hung up these copper pipes, like what you would use for plumbing, to hang the pots and the pans. The coming in plumbing, not the going out plumbing. It has no relevance to this topic, but wasn't it kind of cute? But all those changes were incited by one LED light, which was probably 5,000 or 6,000 kelvins. Who is Kelvin, you ask? Well, I guess I should introduce you to. My friend Lord Kelvin saw you from across the bar. He said you look really hot and was wondering what temperature you were. Like in Celsius. 37 degrees? Oh, I'll let him know. This guy was doing a lot of math and thermodynamics, including work with units of measurement for temperature. And today, kelvins are often used not to measure how hot it is in here, but instead to measure how hot a color temperature is. So according to this scale, lighting can go from 1000 to 10,000 Kelvin, and in between are all the lights you know and love. 1000 to 2000 Kelvin is a candle, 2400 Kelvin is a standard incandescent bulb, 6000 Kelvin is a strobe or a camera flash. The scale that describes these does a good job emphasizing what these look like in the natural world. 1850 Kelvin is sunrise, sunset. 6500 Kelvin is daylight overcast. 10,000 Kelvin is a clear blue sky. But I think this scale might make people underestimate how bright a bright blue sky is. I'm currently being affected by one. When I hear a light bulb is equivalent to a daylight sky, that sounds like what I want. But that will look pretty different when it's outside in the entire world than it does in your pretty small inside. And when we bring light inside and try to match the exterior effect, it will never have the same effect. It's well described in this book, A Pattern Language, which is written in the shadiest way possible. Uniform illumination, the sweetheart of the lighting engineers, serves no useful purpose whatsoever. In fact, it destroys the social nature of space and makes people feel disoriented and unbounded. Look at this picture. It's an egg crate ceiling with dozens of evenly spaced fluorescent lights above it. It is meant to make the sky as flat and even as possible, in a mistaken effort to imitate the sky. It goes on to state that the light outdoors is never even. It's coming from a direction, there are shadows and dappled light, which they say varies minute to minute and place to place. And occasionally in nature, when light is uniformly coming from above, it can have an almost disorienting effect. My TikTok friend Dexter MP4 introduced me to the phenomenon Lahaina Noon, which is a date in Hawaii when the sun is directly above the earth. It happens to places close to the equator within a month of the summer solstice, when the sun is so perfectly overhead that nothing has a shadow. And in a world without shadows, everything looks like it was badly photoshopped into its surroundings. Like, is this post in the ground, or are we in an episode of Blue's Clues? So in offices trying to mirror that direct, bright overhead light, they are unintentionally getting closer to one of the more disorienting lighting phenomenons in the world that makes you want to build cool art installations. And as we all know, that is not what corporate America wants for its workers. But a pattern language isn't just frustrated by this false attempt at nature, it's also considering how people gather. That people instinctively want to gather around light. And when all light is identical, a group is not encouraged to meet. Having a pool of light that somewhat matches the size of the group adds cohesiveness. They write their solution in bold. Place the lights low and apart to form individual pools of light which encompass chairs and tables like bubbles to reinforce the social character of the spaces which they form. Remember that you can't have pools of light without darker places in between. If that's not a Leonard Cohen bar, I don't know what is. And when I think back to Gilmore Girls and the scene of Lorelai and Rory sitting at the table talking, the pool of light seems to surround the two of them. And because you're watching close by, it almost feels like you might be included in that pool of light too. And that's what I think a lot of us want. The comfort of being in a pool of light with your friends. Or in this case, listening to your fictional friends talk really fast. And so when I look at later photos of their kitchen, I notice how much is missing. The shelving behind Rory somehow looks messier despite there being well-folded things behind her. Or this pile of things on the kitchen counter which really doesn't grab any attention but adds realism. Then one season later, you're noticing everything. Every kitchen magnet, fridge clutter, pots and pans. And they were not alone in suddenly having a kitchen plagued by cooler light. It's what got us here, and it's a place we've been before. But first, I want to explain LEDs, while also explaining all the light bulb changes in the past century. And I know that sounds boring, but I have two words for you. Edison Screw. When a light fixture and a light bulb love each other very much, there are three types of light bulbs we're going to talk about today, and they all have the Edison Screw. This is an incandescent bulb with pretty much the same Edison screw which was patented in 1881 and was considered the most popular light bottom in 1908. Now that's a real power bottom. And despite every part of the light changing in the past 115 years, that way of connecting the light to its lamp or fixture has stayed the same. There were initially other options, but this one was able to stay connected no matter which way it was hanging, and it was simple to swap. But one of the reasons it was universalized is because of a problem you might be familiar with. Have you ever been trying to charge your wireless headphones when you go to plug it in, but that's the wrong cable? You are trying to charge your headphones with the cable you're supposed to use for your speaker, or your phone, or your remote. Nothing matches and you will have to live in silence. Or you will need to properly organize your 10 different cords just to exist with your electronics. And like buying a light bulb that doesn't fit into your light fixture, you could buy a cable that doesn't work for your electronics. It means you've wasted your time and your money. We've been living in this cable hell for decades, until the EU said, wow, this is causing a lot of electronic waste. What if you all used the same cable that exists and is fast, efficient, and good? Our little Granny Smith didn't want to do it at first. But because they didn't want to make a completely different phone for Europe, they found a way to engineer a phone that uses a known cable that is fast, efficient, and good. So the Edison Screw was like the USB-C of their time. That meant that when you brought home your bulb with an Edison screw, usually an E26, you knew it would fit into your socket. Now to be clear, in that footage, I am not a hostage. I'm just in my electrician father's basement showing you some bulbs. So let's talk bulbs. Not that type. Now the cool thing, the hot thing about incandescent bulbs was the filament. How the bulbs work is power is sent to the bulb to heat up the filament until the filament gets hot enough to glow. So this lighting can only be so energy efficient, which meant scientists were still looking for alternatives that were more energy efficient. Welcome to the light with the worst reputation, fluorescent. First, I want you to visualize a place that you hate. Got it? Fluorescents were really common in hospitals, schools, factories, offices, places that could afford the upfront investment to have energy savings in the future. Now think back to the place that you said you hated. Can you see why fluorescents might have a bad reputation? When photographed or filmed, they can have a bluish or greenish tint, and in general, the lighting is very blue and cold. The fluorescents work when a mercury gas is lit up inside the bulb, which has been coated with phosphorescence. When the electrical current connects with the gas, the light lights up. It can also flicker when you first turn it on. They originally were long tubes that didn't use the Edison screw, but instead pins. But in the midst of the energy crisis in the 70s, we needed lower energy usage and costs. So fluorescents got a twist. Now they were twirled all around to fit inside a normal Edison screw bottom. Some people switched over, but for a long while they were much more expensive. So a lot of people just kept using incandescents. Now to the diode of the hour. The light-emitting diode. These were being explored in the 70s and are powered by the movement of electrons on a semiconductor material. Originally, they only had red, like my alarm clock. Then came yellow and green. But the biggest innovation came when they found the blue diode, which allowed them to make white. You probably know LED lights from nearly everything in your house these days. And in the past 5 years, we've seen tons of innovation within LEDs that allows for all the colors and the shapes. It's what makes every room inhabited by a 20-something streamer look like the Star Trek bridge after it was hit by an asteroid. You can see an LED in action really well on this flashlight. It's the silicone chip that emits the light, and as you can tell, it's very bright. This is probably what the men in black use to non-consensually erase people's memories, which I think makes them the bad guys. At first, LEDs were producing a very blue, cool light. In 2011, steps were being taken to produce a warmer LED light at a lower price. But it took years, and in the meantime, we were all haunted by lights that made you look like Bella in the first Twilight. And there was kind of almost a competition to try and get the compact fluorescents and the LED light bulbs to be a similar cost as regular incandescent bulbs. So in 2013, compact fluorescent bulbs got as low as $1.74 per bulb, and LED costs were coming down rapidly too. Over the years, the bulbs have gotten warmer. But it's not surprising that a lot of decor trends could not survive this blue cold light. While wood looks really good under warmer lights, whites and grays look best under cooler lights. Cool lighting is suggested for bathrooms, kitchens, and workplaces. It's supposed to make you feel more alert, and it's important to feel really on top of your game when you're taking a shower. And in response, I'm not surprised that the yellow wooden cabinets and dark countertops didn't survive. All the early 2000s Tuscan kitchens seem to disappear overnight. And I think it's the same reason you will never see a Cheesecake Factory using a 6,000 Kelvin LED. Do not bring that flashlight I used into there. You will be banned for absolutely obliterating the vibe. Now, white kitchens have been something that have fallen in and out of popularity over the centuries, especially during times when cleanliness was a top concern. So let's dry off my time machine. I recently went to the future and it got really wet. We're going back to 1919 to a ladies' home journal that perfectly encapsulates our cyclical color journey. It also has the most Barbie headline ever. I'm gonna do my own work, and I want a pretty place in which to do it. Their first example is a woman whose friends desperately tried to stop her. When I furnished my house, explained a young married woman who had the courage of her convictions, I decided that my kitchen was going to be done in white, rose pink, and French gray. My amazed friends declared it would resemble a millinery salon and advised me to be more conservative. But now when they visit me, they spend as much time in my kitchen as in my living room for the simple reason that it's a cheerful, beautiful place. Wow, I guess her kitchen is the heart of where the magic happens in the home. She goes on to describe the rest of her kitchen. The woodwork painted white, the walls a light gray, a tile pattern in slate gray and white, and all white enamel appliances. The cooking utensils are gray aluminum, while my cereal jars and other kitchen dishes are white with a rose decoration. Now it's obviously different, but if that's not the color scheme of Mandy Moore's 2018 Architectural Digest kitchen, I don't know what is. And later in the article, we get an optimistic DIYer who redid her kitchen in white and yellow. An attractive kitchen does not necessarily depend upon a sunny location or upon the expenditure of a large sum of money for equipment, said a woman who made over her dark, old-fashioned kitchen, doing most of the work herself. Since she could not afford new furniture, she painted the old tables and stepladder chair white. Since this kitchen has never been equipped with adequate space in which to keep brooms and cleaning implements out of sight, an old wardrobe was brought down from the garret and made into a broom closet. After being stripped of all movable ornaments to make it as unobtrusive as possible, it was painted white. Now, if you took out the word expenditures and make Garrett the name of her husband, I swear this could be the voiceover for a TikTok kitchen renovation.
How I redid my kitchen for under $100.
And her paintbrush are not alone in the long history of painting things white. Paint cabinets white has been on the come up on Google Trends since 2014 and finally hit its snowy white peak at the beginning of the pandemic when everyone stayed inside long enough to decide everything in their house was ugly. But in another ladies' home journal from a month later, there's an ad that tells us more about what's happening with electricity at the time. Cue the Hotpoint appliances made by Edison Electric Appliance Company. How many servants await your bidding day and night, always eager to serve? For the answer, count the lamp sockets in your home. But let's zoom in on this ad. Yeah, that's right, we're back to the Edison Screw. This ad is telling you all the little appliances that can be plugged into your lamp sockets. A hair curler, a water warmer, a radiant heater to bake babies, a heating pad, a grill, an iron, a toaster, a coffee pot. Now, electricity still wasn't in all homes, but by 1925 it was in half of them. And electricity was in a lot of newer homes with disposable income, which might be lived in by Ladies' Home Journal subscribers. So while their houses and kitchens were getting more literally lit, their kitchen decor was also trending white, suggesting that when you start to brighten up the place, very few know how to stop. These articles were also published amidst the Great Influenza epidemic between 1918 and 1920. And the color white being tied to sanitation was already tried and true. But there's also this idea of bright white kitchens being clean and efficient. And I sometimes wonder if these bulbs might be over-expectant of what's coming out of our home kitchens and bathrooms. I want it to be easy to see in my kitchen, but I'm not trying to bake 1,000 breads. I'm usually casually and sometimes lackadaisically making a meal in there. And I might be in there when I'm tired, and efficiency isn't my main goal. I mostly want it to be an easy and enjoyable experience that ends with me eating food. And it's easy to blame those early 2010s light bulbs for being so cool. But it also comes down to knowledge. It took me years of looking at rooms and lights to understand why certain rooms I never wanted to turn on the overhead, and why I never felt that comfortable. And when the package says 5,000 Kelvin daylight white, you probably don't know that that's actually really bright. It might say best for bathrooms, kitchens, garages, but they don't know your kitchen, they don't know your decor. They're just young Frankenstein requesting that you turn on all the switches and make it so bright that you bring the dead back to life. I think the trend towards really bright white kitchens with only white and sometimes gray was sped up and solidified by the bright, cool LEDs and compact fluorescents. And I'd say these are pretty unforgiving lights that put everything on display. That means that if you want this type of kitchen, every item you have has to be aesthetic. Or it has to have a place to be hidden, because God forbid it's seen by you and your family. But when everything needs a place, it might bring you down the home edit pipeline, where your cabinets and pantries and fridges need containers with all your identical products. Because if you're thinking your counters are messy, why not play on hard mode and think your cabinets are messy too? In conclusion, if you're noticing that you really don't like how a room in your house is looking, before you paint everything or change your countertops or tear down a wall, maybe try changing out your light bulbs. There might be a lot more that you like under a 2700 or a 3000 Kelvin LED light bulb. It's a lot cheaper and it might be an aha moment for you. Fun fact, when you subscribe to this YouTube channel, you're joining my internet house, which is completely lit by Victorian gas fixtures, and we're all getting a little messed up from the fumes. If you'd like to join my Patreon, this month I am digitally leafing through the ladies' home journals. I ended up finding them all because I was searching for this weird Apple font, which I found. If you're interested in light or electricity or know someone who is, for my podcast, Someone Lived Here, I went to the house of Lewis Latimer. He was an inventor, an electrical pioneer, and he was also a really good poet. That episode is also one of the few episodes I have uploaded here on YouTube with imagery, so you can watch it or just listen. Bye. Bye. Goodbye.